Rev up your engine! Alright, the Nissan Rogue. It's now Nissan's best-selling vehicle. I'm not a fan, of course. They have problems. This particular one, man's daughter was driving on the highway, just stopped running. Then it got going again, and people can't figure out what's wrong. Well, I'm going to figure out what's wrong. I'll give a little history. Personally, I don't understand why anybody would buy a Rogue, because presently, 2021, the list price of the Rogue is about $750 cheaper than the list price of an equivalent Toyota RAV4. It would make no sense to buy one of these. But then again, you get these things relatively cheap, used. Now, I have to say they're relatively safe vehicles inside, because her daughter got hit by a Hummer. She then got the insurance money and paid just a little bit more and got this 2011 Rogue SL, which was a higher model, and it only cost her a couple thousand more. It was like $12,000. That's used. It's a lot less than the original list price. $26,500 was what this thing cost originally, and it only had about 50,000 miles on it. That shows you that their resale values aren't that great. But to look on the positive side, this thing has 138,000 miles, and it just stopped her on the highway last week. So it's run a while for her. Now, unfortunately for her, this is probably the tip of the iceberg, and it's going to start having electric problems up the wazoo, or their horrible Jatco automatic transmissions, which are CVT transmissions. This says a CVT transmission. It could go out, or as we look under the hood, you got to watch their head gaskets. They can have problems, but at least this is an older model. It's 2011. So, if you look down here, you'll see it has regular fuel injectors, and it's not turbocharged, which is probably why it's still running pretty good. It doesn't have GDI, gasoline direct injectors, and it doesn't have a turbocharger, which is going to wear these things out faster. I just did a video the other day with an old 77 Nissan pickup truck. It had the same size engine, 2.4 liter. It was still running pretty good. These older engines, they work a lot better than the newer ones do. People buy them because they got a lot of room in them. You know, you open the door, if you didn't just look closely, you'd think it could be like a RAV4. It's got the same type of room and a medium-sized trunk. And really, it's a decent-looking SUV. But this one, she's driving on the highway, traffic slowed down, she was going 15, 20 miles an hour, and the thing just conked out on her. So let's figure out why. So first we'll check the battery. We'll just hook it up, negative to negative, positive to positive. Make sure they're nice and tight. In vehicle, battery post, top post, regular battery. And the input, 640 cold cranking amps. Put it up to 640. Surface charge detected. All right, we'll turn the headlights on. Make sure you close the door. Can't have any circuits open. Retesting, battery test. It's definitely above 32 degrees Fahrenheit today. It's good, but it needs recharging. Now, he just drove it from Dover, and it's like 50 miles away. That should be enough to charge it up. Let's do the rest of the tests. So we'll start it. Crank is normal, now we'll test it. Rub the engine. From my 50 years experience of working on these things, if your battery says it needs to be recharged, but it's been driven on a highway for a while, and it still says it needs to be recharged, but the alternator test is okay, that means the battery's just shot. I'd replace the battery for sure, but we're gonna go through all the rest of it with my big computer. We plug it in right here, and we'll check it out. Diagnosis, we're gonna auto search. It's a new machine, so here we go. Looks like we're at the slot machines. Are we gonna win or not? Look, we've got a winner, 2011 Nissan Rogue. So let's diagnose it. We'll do a full system diagnosis. Take a while, because it's going through the whole car. But you really need that when you get a problem that the car just conked out. As long as you have not disconnected the battery, it will retain all the memory of what's happened in the past. So, we'll be able to get some good information when it's done. Transmission control module has a problem, so let's check that first. P1701. So, as we can see from my data system, when the power supply to the transmission control module is cut off, the malfunction is detected and it sets this code. So what does that say? It didn't get power. Trip that code. If the battery's weak, if it goes below a certain parameter, it's exactly what will happen. Now it's got some other codes too. The control module has 3 codes. Let's check them out. We got low pressure front, right, low pressure right, and ignition circuit open. Well, low tire pressure has nothing to do with it, but it's got an ignition circuit open cause, and that will definitely kill a car too. So it lost ignition signal. Again, if the battery gets below a certain parameter, it'll start shutting things off. And realize, it's not as simple as you might think. This looks like a regular ignition switch. No, it isn't. Everything's an illusion these days. That looks like an ignition switch you put a key in. You don't even put a key in it. It is a 5-volt reference signal that when you turn it, sends information to the computer. Then the computer looks all around and goes, is this right? Is that right? Is this right? Is that right? Is it in park? Is it in neutral? Blah, 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 blah. Then the computer sends a 5-volt ground to a computer module. Then the module sends out power to a relay. Now the relay takes that 5 volts, and then the relay has a 12-volt power supply. Then that 5 volts grounds it and sends 12 volts to the system. The system itself works on 12 volts, but the system that supplies power to it only works on 5 volts. You lose power. That 5 volts doesn't work right, the car will die. Now, there's a zillion things that can go wrong. Computers, wiring, even in this case, an ignition switch can cause that. But since the battery says that it's good but it needs recharging, even though it's been recharged, replace the battery on a car like this first. Now, let's say it didn't have any codes like that. Then the first thing I would have done with this, I would have taken this all apart and replaced the electrical part of the ignition switch. But since it says the battery needs to be recharged, even though it's been recharged, always fix the simple things first. Just yesterday, one of the viewers emailed me and said, my whole body of my vehicle's shaking. I had the whole front end done over, but I know the rear end's got problems. I don't think it's that. You know, I put a drive shaft in, I had the tires bounced, but still, when I get to a certain speed, the whole vehicle shakes. Well, I told him, I said, you know you got a problem in your rear suspension, fix that first. Because if those shocks are gone, or if the control arm bushings are rotten, and it's got too much play, that's going to make it shake all over the place. And strangely enough, when you get rear problems on your car, your whole vehicle will shake. But if you have front end problems, generally it's the steering wheel that starts shaking first. But if you got problems in the back, the steering wheel generally won't shake, but the whole vehicle will sway side to side. Always fix what you know it's broken first. There's so many interactions in cars today. Don't end up kicking yourself in the head because something as dumb as your battery needs replacing and you don't replace it. So we're looking here. This battery is, 3 years old. Now it does have 640 cold cranking amps, but they never last all that long. So let's take this thing for a ride, see how it goes. Now, as you can see, it starts right up. No problems. You can hear a little bit of engine noise, but all these Nissan engines with the timing chains, they're a little bit weak, so you can hear the timing chain a little, but that's normal for these things. It's nothing outrageous. Now it's got that wonky CVT transmission, but kind of sounds like a motorboat to me. I just don't like the CVT transmissions unless they're Toyota or Honda and they have those launch gears. Because when they got those launch gears on them, they take off in an actual gear. And then they switch to the CVT after first gear is done. And that's got a nice ride to it. You sit up relatively high so you feel safe. And being a Nissan, it's got good handling. There's no arguing that. It's a comfy car for driving around in. So, let's see what this thing can do. We got it in drive. Not really brisk acceleration. And of course it's a CVT, so it doesn't shift gears. That's why it went up high and stayed. Now it's better than the earlier ones, but still, I'm not really impressed. You get out on the open road, hey, they're nice driving cars. I got nothing against them. You want to piddle around on these things? It's got 138,000 miles on it. Hey, they're not horrible cars. Of course, as I said, if you're gonna buy a brand new one, heck, for 800 bucks more, get yourself a RAV4 or a Honda CRV, They're much better made vehicles. But these things used, like she got for 12 grand, and she's put like 75,000 miles on the thing, and it's still running. What the heck? And there's nobody around now, so let's check the brakes. ABS works good, comes to a stop. They're still working fine. But that takeoff to me, pretty slow. Kind of like you're waiting and waiting and waiting. And then it sounds like you're a little motorboat. So now you know a little bit more about the Nissan Rogue and about analyzing cars that die while you're going down the road. And why, if you could get one of these cheap enough with low enough mileage, could be a decent car for a while. But if you're in the market for a new one, you'd be a fool to pay 800 bucks less than a RAV4 or a CRV and buy one of these new. No way. But used, you could probably save 2 to 3 times your money buying one of these things used. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.